there, fellow zombie slayers! My name is Stanley557. Origins. You love it, I love it, and today we're going to investigate a pre-release build of the map. Not only does this build include cut features, an early intro cinematic, and a rough outline for the final product, but also included in this build of the game are early renditions of a forgotten Zombie Chronicles. Just like Black Ops 1 and its Resurrection DLC, Black Ops 2 planned to feature every single map that came before it. This information was not publicly available until now, and is a paramount find for the community. But, one day we'll go into those maps another time. But, for now, let's look at the real meat and potatoes with the pre-release build of Origins, titled Les Tombes. It should be noted that much of the alpha footage that's going to be seen was collected with cheats enabled. This made getting footage easier, and it's why Undead hardly seem to want to follow me in certain clips. So let's first start out with the intro cinematic, which is the first of its kind that we've ever gotten our hands on. Getting insight into how the developers build these cutscenes is nothing short of magical. Notable highlights include Spec Ops soldiers unearthing the tomb, this stock photo of Maxis, which has been tied to his character for years without us knowing its origins, Ultimus versions of our characters battling undead, which, by the way, would have made for a great map, especially in Black Ops 4, where they wanted to take some previous maps and retool them and remaster them with different variations, Sal DeLuca taking the place of Maxis on the surgery table, and finally, an early design for the 1,000-foot-tall robot shows up. This cutscene is super primitive, but gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see these cutscenes and the various stages that they must go through. One small detail I love that gets omitted from the final release is Richtofen holding Max's hand after the surgery. This is a minute detail, but it quickly characterizes the bond that the two had without saying anything. But if I'm being honest, the visual of Ultimus Richtofen cradling a dying Sal DeLuca in his arms is hilarious. So from the intro, let's talk about the first third of the map. This includes Spawn, the trenches, and Gens 2 and 3. This entire section is the least unchanged from their release counterparts. An immediate difference that you'll notice, though, is how players spawn in the four corners of the spawn room rather than in the front of the table. This was probably meant to give a better impression that the characters are all scattered about before being presumably crushed by the robot, but this was most likely changed for gameplay reasons. There's only one shovel in the room, the challenge board sits directly in front of Max's surgery table, and the undead use Mob of the Dead models. The generators are also in a primitive state. They are missing their charging graphic and churn green 115 inside the generator pillars. This probably explains why the music Easter egg on the final build is accessed by interacting with green 115, and may have simply referenced this change in development. Coming into the trench to Gen 2, you can find new prefab objects including this tall Group 935 crate scattered about the map. Opening up to Gen 2, you'll find the area is slightly different. The generator and bunker have swapped places, with the machine in front of you and the bunker right behind it. But besides that, the bunker remains relatively unchanged, even including the exact same geometry meant to allow you to enter the robot's foot, and the mud trail outside meant for the tank. There's also the box, which has a rudimentary design, but shows clear ideas of evolution that would turn it into the one that we all know and love. The biggest difference, however, is the inclusion of a turret trap. By activating the switch within the bunker, the device comes to life and kinda works. Honestly, it's in some pretty early stages, but the fact that it even had an animation surprised me more than anything. Fun fact, I spent 6 hours playing the map to get footage and couldn't figure out what this turret was for. And just when I thought it was a random object that was cut from development, I finally put 2 and 2 together when writing the script and realized that this is the turret that you can activate. Like, I could feel my brain wrinkling upon the discovery. Going up to the trench to Gen 3, both the path and the generator itself remain completely unchanged until the final release, with the only difference being some mud in the trenches that slow you down temporarily. In this first portion of the map, you'll be able to find the 3 shield pieces, except for that one location by Gen 5, the Ice Staff disc, and the first Ice Staff piece. Unlike the final map, however, the Ice Staff pieces can be dug up at any time, and are set to pre-designated spots in 3 specific parts of the map, pretty much just like you find in the normal part of the map, with Gens 2-3 housing a part, the middle of the map housing a part, and the back half of the map housing a part. This was indicated to me by the debug menu, and I'm glad it was because I never would have realized that you could dig up and get the Ice Staff pieces on non-snowing rounds like you could in the final build. And finally, there's the bunker, which keeps the exact same geometry as the final release, but is missing decoration, so it just looks like some big stone block both inside and out. Now there's the second third of the map. Upon entering No Man's Land, players will be immediately ambushed by the Panzer Soldat. This was obviously changed for the sake of difficulty, and if ignored, would have made the map way too difficult, especially in the early game, as you can access No Man's Land as early as round 4. And a round 4 Panzer is not fun, let me tell ya. When coming out of the bunker, you'll immediately notice that there's a downed tank, which can be used to activate a flamethrower trap. While the tank and trap are not in the final build, you can still see an opening in the barbed wire where it would have gone. Then there's the area's layout, which is distinct enough to mention. On both sides of the mound, players can use additional pathways to get around. For example, going straight ahead out of the bunker, in the final release, you'll find this long line of barbed wire in 2 distinct paths. On the left is a tight close quarter path filled with boards to prevent movement slowdown, and on the right is a larger but muddy tank path that can be useful, but you have to commit to going down it as you'll have constantly hampered movement. Regardless of what path you pick, you'll have to commit to it, all the while the undead can hop the barbed wire whenever they want. But in the alpha, there appears to be an open space in the middle of these paths that gives you more options to escape. This is most likely changed to force you into more dangerous scenarios and redundancy. For example, just ahead of this spot in the final build is an inaccessible part of the tank path, but in the alpha, this was pushed back a bit and includes an additional route for players to take around the mound and the robot's foot right here. Again, most likely removed because of redundancy, tightening the core of the map flow, and forcing you to take paths that are right in the line of sight of the robot's movement. So now let's move on to Gen 4. Remaining relatively the same, Gen 4 is simply missing its set dressing, and in place of Jug, this area is the original home of Stamina. And finally, the area's respective part, which is surprisingly the mound disc. This is strange because the other 3 disc types are in their respective spots. Fire disc is on the opposite side of the map of the fire tunnel, the ice disc is as far away from its tunnel as possible, wind disc is at Gen 5, but only the lightning disc is in the mound, and the mound disc that's used to open the main chamber is at Gen 4. Which is some weird inconsistency, but whatever, it's clear that this got ironed out in the final release, with each disc being as far away from their respective tunnels as possible, and the white disc being in the area around the mound. Up next is Gen 5. While the entire area plays exactly the same, the house that would cover the generator is protected by a roof and looks much less derelict, better lending to the notion that people actually lived near the dig site, rather than just being a barren wasteland. Obviously, the battlefield should be completely leveled by bombardments. Also housed at Gen 5 is the wind disc and one location for the gramophone. And finally, there's the mound, which houses the lightning disc, a single location for a single piece of the Maxis drone, and finally the main chamber. The mound isn't entirely different, but to say it shares complete similarities with its final counterpart would be a lie. You'll notice a different color palette, less lighting, less specific pieces, and different mechanisms, including the turntables used when you charge the orbs. In this version, each lever is on the right ramp going up, rather than around the area and on top of the scaffolding. And what's funny is that even the position of the orbs can also be rotated. This is most likely changed to what we have in the final version to make it less confusing and more challenging at the same time, but really it's not much of a big change. Each staff is built below 4 sorting grade statues, and instead of Primus, there appears to be an undead warlord hovering over them, indicating that the staffs might have had a more sinister origin to them. But who knows, this could have been a placeholder, or even an early rendition for the Apothicons and the Keepers. Because honestly, when I look at this statue, it immediately strikes me as looking similar to King Barbarossa's statue in the Final Reich. So who knows, maybe the 2 ideas have similar inspirations. Also on top of the mound is a dinky little pack-a-punch machine, no doubt a work in progress for the one that we'd receive in the final build, but it's charming nonetheless. Oh, also, I completely forgot about the Mauser. The Mauser is the only World War I gun that makes it into this current build of the map. There's definitely no MGOA, but the MP40 is in the map but is missing its adjustable stock. When Pack-a-Punch, the Mauser turns into the first shooter, and this thing is frankly terrible, but also clearly an in-development build of this weapon that was supposed to evolve into the Mauser and the Boomhilda in the final release. And finally, there's the most drastically different section of the map, which is originally just the church and Gen 6 in the final build. Before we learned of this build of the game, rumors had it that there was a cut village section of Origins alongside a flogger trap, and as it turns out, this is completely true. Originally, stuff like the flogger was only ever referenced in Revelations, so if you didn't know this was a cut feature, the flogger being in the Origin section would seem kinda weird. But here it is, completely in the flesh and fully coded into work. By attempting to enter the town area, you'll find the flogger, which works exactly as intended. Then there's the town itself, which is a whole other section of the map, involving plenty of interweaving pathways, stairs, and routes. Honestly, this section is so big it could be its own survival map, but it is obvious why it was cut. Sitting in the center of the town is Generator 6 and Juggernog. Honestly, if this was kept in the final version of Origins, it would have been 10 times harder. It's quite a trek to make it this far into the map, and presumably there would be a panzer or two along the way, especially with how many doors that you have to open. Scattered about the town are the majority of the Maxis drone pieces and 2 additional workbenches, and overall I can see why this area was cut. While still in its early stages, it's clunky, too far away, and adds way too much stress on an already massive map, especially with how expensive these doors are. In the final release, you have a 1250 door to open up Gen 6 in the church, and another 1250 door to open up the back half of the church. Pretty simple. In the alpha though, there were plenty of doors that cost 1500 to 2000 points, and due to their primitive state, they're not currently linked to other doors in the area, so each path has 2 doors that each cost 2000. And there's like 8 of these things. But finally, after pushing through the town, you arrive at the church, which features an elusive 7th generator and multiple ramps that allow you to access both the top and bottom floor where the tank is housed with ease. Finally reaching the spot in the map also allows you to follow the mud trails around the map just like in the final version, and are an extremely simple way to get back to spawn without needing to traverse the entire play space again. In my opinion, the town section is super cool, and I'm surprised how expansive that they got with it, but it's clear why it was cut. If there was a Bo4 remaster of Origins, this section would have totally been included. Also up here is the active Wonderfizz machine, which costs 2500 points, and can give you one of the 5 perks present on the map: Jug, Stamina, Speed Cola, Quick Revive, and Mule Kick. Also included in the machine are the 4 perks exclusive to the Wonderfizz, including PhD, Electric Cherry, Double Tap, and Dead Shot. What's funny is that the machine can give you duplicate perks. These provide you with no tactical advantage and simply take up perk slots. And finally included at the church is one of the gramophone locations and the fire staff disc. Also included in the build is Zombie Blood, which works more or less as intended with default audio clips. The giant robots, which I actually think look really cool in this primitive state, and can be accessed, although the glow that indicates which foot is open is not super strong. And then there's the tank, which features a grenade launcher on the front, fires missiles, spews fire, and overall is an absolute menace on the battlefield. I can 100% see why it was nerfed, but its janky nature is super cool to behold. Especially when it gets to Gen 2, that's where it just goes completely apeshit for some reason. And that's every feature on the map. But now let's get to the main event, the staffs. Each staff is collected in a similar manner to their final counterpart. For wind, you need to ascend into each robot. For ice, you need to dig up around the map for them. For fire, you need to progress through the map. And for lightning, you need to ride the tank. Each piece of the staff is represented by the same staff kind of part that looks like just the complete staff, scattered on the map 12 times. You gotta grab 3 of these for each corresponding color. Wind is completely unchanged from its final counterpart. For ice, you just need to dig up in the right spots between gens 2, 3, the middle of the map between gens 4, 5, and finally in the dig spots in between gens 6 and 7. For fire, a piece is rewarded for defeating the panzer, for arriving to gen 6, and for shooting down the glowing plane once you open up the town area. And finally for lightning, you need to ride the tank to the spot near gen 3 for the first part, the mound for the second part, and discover a whole new location in the town for the third part. What's interesting is that in this build, each lightning staff piece offers players a clean exit where you collected them. For the mound case, this is required as entering the mound to collect the piece forces you to drop off to retrieve it. And then there's the town piece, which was actually quite cool to try and figure out how to retrieve it since it's not in the final version. It felt so cool. It was like I was exploring something I wasn't supposed to be. Speaking of ancient secrets, there are the tombs, which in a map originally titled Lay Tomb, I would expect such. By gathering each respective record and the gramophone, you can find the chambers designated to each staff. Unlike in the final build, however, there is no crazy place. Instead, each staff belongs to a respective white chamber, where similar features to the final release can be performed. Fun fact, once a chamber is opened, it will stay open forever, which makes sense considering each chamber is separate, and it would be a nightmare to carry around the gramophone with you everywhere and fight your fellow teammates for it. Building each staff is as easy as collecting the crystal, the parts, and constructing them within the main chamber, with each staff simply looking like a bland colored stick, with lightning being green instead of purple. The puzzles are nearly identical to the ones found in the final build. For lightning, you have the piano puzzle, for ice, you have to match runes, for fire, you simply have to kill undead under 4 metal grates, and for wind, you just need to shoot wooden beams in order for the stone puzzle to move. The codes for the lightning, ice, and wind puzzles are the exact same, so any old guide should do. For the wind puzzle, just make sure that the orientation is facing this side of the room. Then there's the overworld puzzles. For lightning, you need to track down the electric panels, which exist in close approximation to where they are in the final release. For the ice staff, the first 2 graves are in their usual spots. There's one by Gen 2 and one by the mound, and the final one is actually located in the town, in the absolute back right of the map. When the town section was removed, this grave was moved to being outside of Gen 4. For the wind staff, you just need to find 3 smokestacks around the map and direct them toward the mound. The first 2 are in the usual spots. There's one by Gen 4 and one by Gen 5 on this tank. But for the final one, you'll need to enter the town and head on the tank path where you can find one final smokestack on this tank. When the town was removed, this smokestack would be placed on the opposite tank path going towards Gen 5. And finally, for fire, the code can be found scattered around the town instead of just being in the church, but can still be solved just by the same tank spot, with the extra numbers like 12 being thrown into the mix. Once each staff is completed, you can re-enter the main chamber and charge the orbs just like that you would in the final build. Although for some reason with the ice staff, it just can't charge its orb, which is weird considering it can still be upgraded, so who cares. Once these puzzles are completed, you can re-enter the main chamber and begin charging the staffs with the souls of the undead. While you do this, each chamber will present to you a different hazard. For ice, it's rising and falling walls. For lightning, it's walls that close in and out of the arena. For wind, it's an entire spinning apparatus. And for fire, it's rising and falling platforms. Each of these chambers adds a ton to the experience, but if you thought it took forever to build and upgrade a staff in the final release, the alpha build makes building each staff a Herculean ordeal. And compared to the final experience, it's clear to see why there were so many changes, including the addition of the Crazy Place, which is a unified area where each of the staffs coexist, and the simple addition of just falling walls to keep you on your toes without overcomplicating the whole thing. Once 2 staffs are complete, you can begin taking the portals that reside in each chamber, with each portal taking you to a pre-designated spot around the map. But honestly, for how long it takes to build and upgrade a single staff, it comes way too late. But you do all of that work and your staff is finally upgraded. To represent this change, each staff gets a gold finish and a silver revive rod, which I actually didn't test because I was in solo, so who knows if it actually works. But then there's each staff's combat prowess. Unlike the final build, the staffs are not at all that powerful. They're clunky, awkward to use, and charging them just causes the game to completely freak out. Fire, when charged, shoots out volcanic bombs that explode, ice summons a blizzard, lightning fires a charged shot that might get better kills in its single shot, I don't know, it was hard to tell, and wind summons a tornado that makes undead spin uncontrollably before throwing them to their deaths. I love this thing, bring it back. It reminds me of the Discord from IW Spaceland, it's so goofy. And they also have some funky stats. The fire staff, when unupgraded, fires 3 bullets at a time and has 150 ammo, but when upgraded, it fires 1 shot at a time and has 100 bullets. I don't know, it's weird. The wind staff only has 2 shots in each clip, and the ice staff is still called the Staff of Water, despite all of its references and abilities to being, well, ice. And then there's the lightning staff, which while firing purple bolts of lightning, still brands a green disc, colored chamber, and orb. So most likely these effects had yet to be changed. Now let's get to some other stuff. Let's see, I love the effect that plays whenever you get an overworld puzzle complete. You'll see this cool little lightning spire over the mound and it drops the orb down from well above the sky. It looks cooler than just the standard generic light beam that shows up in the final build. There's for some reason 3 big zeppelins that fly throughout the sky rather than just one, which gives me a theory to believe that they were originally how you were supposed to obtain the wind staff parts and not the robots. You constantly hear planes buzzing around, and I never officially tested the Maxis drone, so I can't verify its strengths nor weaknesses, but it does work. Pap uses the transit camo. During the generator rounds, it plays both dog round music and Pentagon Thief round music. The generator siren comes from 5, and if they take a generator, you might just simply lose power to all of your perks, and there's no way to turn it back on, so you just lose access to your perk. That's fun. And I cannot forget about the Panzer, who features an orange glow, functioning jetpack, retractable claw, and mounted flamethrower. Honestly, I'm more surprised he's fully functional in this build of the map. Then there's the cute detail of him laughing whenever he grabs you with his claw, which I'm kinda sad that this never made it into the final build of the game. Let my guy be happy! Oh yeah, there's also stuff which I assume is only in here because it's an alpha build. There are certain spots around the map where undead get stuck, and if they get stuck and the game can't push them out of the walls, the entire thing just starts completely freaking out and the FPS takes a dump. And honestly, it's so annoying it becomes funny after a point. You can easily get out of bounds while riding the tank, and I'm pretty sure if I wasn't in God mode and coming out of the giant robots, the game would just straight up kill me. But that's the alpha build of Origins. This is probably one of COD Zombies' most impressive finds, and to think it's on a map as grandiose as Origins. If you're a dev that worked on this experience, I'm so sorry, but I find this stuff incredibly cool. Please, accidentally leak more of these to me. I need it injected into my veins. The map is quite difficult in this state, and if I wasn't running a mod menu, I'd consider it downright impossible. But who knows? I think this version of the map has some really cool ideas, but if I had to pick between this and the final build, I'd absolutely pick the final build. There's no question about that. But if you ask me, what we have here is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a blast. It was really cool to work out these slightly different steps by myself, using a mix of deductive reasoning with the information I had learned from the actual Origins to piece together what I needed to do. Like anything involving the town section was 100% different, so it was really cool trying to piece together the solutions to some of the puzzles despite so many functions having just slightly different places. But that's the map. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Real quick, I have to give shoutouts to the entire mod team that put this build together from the Activision files, and thank you to Vindicta for helping me get the build running on my modded Xbox 360. I couldn't have done it without you, my dude. But unlike what I usually do, the rest of the video will be footage exploring the alpha build and walking around without commentary. So if you want to see more, simply stay tuned and enjoy the gameplay. As for everyone else, thank you all so much for watching. And remember, keep on slaying.
My name is Samantha. I'm going to tell you how all this really began.